Welcome to the Ripple Effect Martial Arts Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. We're here today with Master Alex Jarvis. Today, he's the master instructor of Ripple Effect Martial Arts in Broomfield, Colorado, and a 5th degree black belt in American Freestyle Tae Kwon Do, and has studied many other styles as well. I can't wait to get into it. Thank you, Mr. Jarvis, for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Can we start off with just the early days? When did you start training in martial arts?
Yeah, I've been training honestly since about 3 to 4 years old.
How do you start at 3 or 4 years old?
Well, honestly, like the starting part is easy, right? But back then, actually, it was a little bit harder because, I mean, especially today, like with Ripple Effect Martial Arts and everything that we stand for, like the sooner we get kids started on making sure that, the integrity, the honesty, the focus, especially at that age, right? The focus and the body coordination and those things, like, especially at that age, that's like the main pieces. But back then, studios and schools, they didn't start at 3 and 4 years old. It was very rare and far and few between that they would even allow you until you're about like at least 6 years old. So we found an instructor that for back then was definitely ahead of the curve, and he taught a lot of the same ways and the same practices that I and as Ripple Effect that we incorporate in our classes as far as the group chats and the overall class messages each month. Like, he was doing those things, and he was like, okay, well, normally I don't do these things, but since Alex, since your student is so like gung-ho and let's do this, let's try it, let's see what works. So it's more, for me getting started, it was more of a let's say an experiment to see how it went. And I'm still around today, so yeah, it went pretty well.
That is a really good way of putting it, and an experiment, because what I remember about that mid-'80s, the Karate Kid kind of era of karate, that mid-late '80s was still really hardcore. I mean, I've heard other instructors say, my school, when I started, didn't allow students until you were 16. Or at that older Blood and Guts era, those guys, they started as college students,
Yeah.
What do you remember as you started to, you were 6, 7, 8 into your teens? How did it progress for you?
Well, I mean, if we want to kick it back to like the main reasons that I got started is because, essentially, and I've told this story a couple times, is like, I loved the Ninja Turtles. There was something about it. Ninja Turtles. I was like, I want to be a turtle, and turtle power all the way, right? So it was either I wanted to be Raphael or I wanted to be Master Splinter, because I liked how Master Splinter knew how to do like all the things, and he was the instructor, and he like could keep everybody a level head, but was like chill in any situation. But at the same time, I liked the I'm going to get stuff done attitude from Raph. So I was like, yeah, I want to be the both best worlds. So, and then my mom promised me a pair of glow-in-the-dark Ninja Turtle underwear. And, the rest is history. I was like, okay, big boy potty. From now on, like, I got this cool pair of underwear and I'm a Ninja Turtle. So that's how I kind of got started, or always like kind of sparked my interest for martial arts. But there's always been something that's kind of been ingrained in me to really get to be in this world. And it just kind of developed from there. I got my first black belt in that system when we weren't, like you were saying, typically 16 years old, that we weren't allowed to be black belts until that age. But because of all the effort and the energy that I've been putting in through the martial arts in those early age years, and then I was able to get my first 3 black belt by the time I was 11. And then so I helped teach classes, and I was running certain, like our assistant instructors do today. And then it kind of just progressed from there. And then I tried some different schools when I started looking at moving out to Colorado, and everything from very traditional Shotokan karate to more of like a Jeet Kune Do freestyle martial arts to what we are doing today with our American Taekwondo.
What you said about Splinter and Raphael, that balance, you really do exhibit that, and it comes across. And there was one time in Estes Park, I was sitting in my black belt test, and I was sitting next to a friend. He's a pediatrician, and we kind of trained together and grew up through the ranks together. And I knew of you, but I hadn't met you yet. And you were doing it might have been Exodus or something. I can't remember what group form it was, but the doctor leaned over to me and just said, "That guy is amazing." It's like, perfectly put. I agree. And you had the discipline on display, but also a kind of a, not relaxation isn't the word, but you're very at home in the martial arts, and it's just amazing to watch.
Thank you.
As a parent, putting their kids into this environment, incentive and motivation as a teacher, how do you provide that to students?
Incentive and motivation. I mean, especially today with the martial arts and how easy, I mean, there's so many different things that kids can get distracted in. And honestly, we're a small part. We're a small part of everybody's day-to-day, interactions that they have, whether it's between school and home and everything. We get those students only for a small fraction of the hours throughout the week. Now, if those parents end up bringing them more so, then wonderful, great. But we get them for an hour, or we get them for 45 minutes, or if they're doing leadership, we get them for about 2 hours, right? But my main motivation and focus is, can I make sure that this is going to be that student's best class? Like if God forbid something happens to either myself or someone else, like, did I make the biggest impact that I could within that amount of time? Are they having fun? Are they smiling and working hard? Do they feel accomplished by the time they leave that class? I think especially today with how many distractions are, you want that time to be fun and motivationally driven, and for them to feel a sense of inspiration. I mean, obviously not every class is going to be like that. We try our best to be that way, but I think that would be my main motivation, is just to make sure that each and every class can be the best that it can be in those specific areas.
Something that I remember about another black belt test where you were instructing and you were telling this young student, 10 years old, I would guess, and you said a few times, you repeated, we'll do it together. Let's do it together. You were working on a form. And I think he was waiting to watch you do something and thought that you're going to now evaluate him doing it. But you said, let's do it together. You could see kind of the acceleration of his learning right on the spot. For a student who isn't focused or seems to be falling behind, do you have any kind of strategy or approach that you take?
I really like as far as like the interaction when a student's maybe they're not picking up something as quickly, right? And that's here, do it with me, right? Do it with me, watch. And then they go through it, and it's that kinesthetic learning, but visual, and then you give the explanation, and everything just kind of flows naturally from there. So I really like that, because they feel like, okay, this person's in it with me. They're not just going to give me the critique, which works for a big variety. But I mean, if we're really getting down to back into your question of, okay, well, maybe it's the motivation aspect. Like, how do we push, and how do we motivate, and how do we make sure the students are at their best? Really, it's just listening, right? You got to listen to where they're coming from, right? If it's a motivational aspect, you got to break it down and see what is the root of what's the root of the cause. Right. And I mean, there's a couple books that we've read throughout the training where it's like influencing with integrity and how to win friends and influence people and doing things the right way. And then not necessarily leading them because you want them to do something, but leading them because it's the best thing for them. And ultimately that's what they kind of want to, but hearing them out to where you can help get them there, and it's their idea, because essentially, unless it's their idea, you're not gonna make any ground or headway. And then obviously with like the younger ones, fun, make it fun, change up how you teach different things, and make it into a game, turn it into a story, have the interaction here, hit this, show them what they're actually doing within the form, so it makes the most concrete sense. When you bring all those in together, you're going to create long-lasting students.
That is really interesting. The idea of making it their idea. That sounds very Mr. Miyagi to me, or something, or Splinter. How did you learn how to do that?
I know I'm quoting just as far as some of those books and stuff, but I mean, honestly, when it really comes down to it, it's just knowing your audience, feeling out that student, and taking the time to really invest in each individual person, and making sure that they know that you're there for them. They're not just another number. They're not just hey, you're that orange belt, let's get you out there. It's really investing in them and taking time to know their why. Why are they there? Growing up, I had an instructor that was very much so that way, where he invested his time in me and made sure that he was a big motivation in my life. And so I think I pull a lot of that from him.
When we were in a black belt test at the Embassy Suites.
We're really going back kind of far now. Okay.
we are because Tuhan Apollo Ladra was there. And for anybody who doesn't know, he's a master of the Filipino martial art of Pekiti Tirsia Kali. And this was a group of hundreds and hundreds of students, and then an even larger crowd of parents and guests looking on. And Tuan Ladra was there instructing in that huge ballroom, and he asked you to come demonstrate certain techniques with a blade. Obviously a one that wasn't sharp, but I don't know, what are those made out of, by the way? The black kind of blades that you practice with?
There's a couple different, right? I mean, you can have just the plastic, like the epoxy, like the polyurethane, those type of things. But the ones that I like the most are the aluminum cast, where it looks like the blade. So that way it gives that same type of flash whenever it hits the light. It trains out the hesitation, not necessarily the fear, because you always want the fear aspect. I don't ever want my students to feel like, oh, I don't have to be afraid of that, because it's not. No, even me, I'm scared of knives, because I've looked up, I've done the research, and it's not pretty. But to train with something to where you can eliminate the hesitation. Oh, I don't know what that is. What do I do? No, it's I know what that is. That's scary. I'm out of here. And getting them to run versus the hesitation. So yes, they're the aluminum ones. They're the ones I like the best.
I love that you just elucidated that. That's what amazed me when I saw you, because number one, take away even the knife, right? Or a weapon or anything. It is super hard to be in front of that many people and all eyes are on you and be asked to demonstrate something. And so for all the students looking on, it was just like, oof, that's what I want to be, that confident. Master Ladra said, I don't even think he said anything. He came at you with an attack and you disarmed him, or you evaded it or blocked. I mean, there were many demonstrations of this in the course of 45 seconds or something. And you talked about the tool itself that helps eliminate the hesitation. What are some other approaches that you've taken yourself and with students to get them to be more confident in themselves and in the martial arts?
Absolutely. So when it comes to the confidence aspect, is one is going to be the repetitions, right? The more you do something, the more you get it in, like, right, you're going to be more confident in that, in those areas. Like for me personally, I mean, my instructor back in the day, like he had us at booths and he had us talking to people and he had us doing different, because that was very much like how we got students. So getting in front of the class and getting in front of that many people has become more of a natural thing for me throughout these years. But when you come to teaching the students is giving them, like we've talked about, giving them a variety of ways on how to do the same motion, but giving them, okay, now you can do it with a stick, or you can do it with a knife, or you can do it with your empty hand. Like these are all, here's what's going on. So I think giving them those opportunities to get the repetitions in, but more so giving them the opportunities to shine, right? So you're on the floor and you're like, okay, all right, I really like this. You know, everybody take a look at Johnny. Mom and Dad, I want you to pause. I want you to check this out because Johnny is killing it over here because he's doing this, this, and this, right? Okay, let's see it, Johnny, and then have him do it. That's the easiest way that you will see a student when they're ready to light up and be like, okay, I got this. Showing a student that they are more than capable, that in itself gives them the confidence.
That's awesome. Something that I remember Master Macy in a big class of yellow gold belts or red belts or green belts. Everything's going on. And then he would stop. He would say, I want everyone to stop and eyes right here. Take a look at this. And he would highlight a student. And it was an amazing feeling for everybody involved. I'm sure it was amazing for that student. And yeah, it's something that I always love seeing in the schools.
My mom thought it was, well, between my mom and my dad, before he passed away, he thought it was very important that I saw both the best and the worst, right? To understand both sides of the coin. You know, to sleeping on the benches, you know, in the middle of the train station in Europe, to, okay, I'm gonna stay in a nice 5-star hotel and, you know, figure out, you know, what's that like about. So me and my mom have been, but it was never a like for like martial arts. I think the farthest that I've went for like training or like a competition, one was with Master Apollo when we would fly down to Florida and do his weekend long training sessions. The one that kind of stands out the most was I just got my black belt, or right before my black belt, and I went to Battle of Atlanta. I was younger. I was about 10, 11 years old. And at that time, it wasn't really like the way that my instructor was like, all right, when you get up there, you show power and you do this. And I want you to yell at every opportunity that you can. All right. So doing a very traditional form and showing all the power, they weren't used to that at that time. And now you see everybody yelling at everything, right? So I did in place, which is fine because it was an awesome learning opportunity. But it was because I had one of the people, hey, you yelled too much. You awesome power, but there's too much yelling. I was like, okay, understood. So then after that, I went to the Georgia Open after that, and then, you know, took home a couple firsts from there. So I think that's the most like traveling I did for like competitions. But the funny thing about that story is it was probably about 2 weeks later, maybe 3, my instructor came to me with a VHS back then. He's like, Alex, I want you to watch this. Tell me what you find. And it was from, I think it was either National Geographic or the History Channel or something like that. But it was on martial arts and the industry and everything. And it got a little ways in, and it was talking about competition and the evolution. And then there I was, in the, you know, front and center. Oh, yeah, just hitting hard. And I was like, heck yeah.
Nice. That is an incredible event. I've never been to the Battle of Atlanta, but you hear stories all the time from, it's been going on for 4 or 5 decades, I think now, right?
I think they just had their 50th or something like that.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And the event that you referenced in Florida with Master Apollo, that
kind of like our black belt testing of immersion weekends. That's essentially what it is, but it's I think it's 4 days of just from you wake up, sit, you're down at the beach by 8 a.m. and you train until the sun starts to go down, and you're in the water, you're in the sand, you're doing all the. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I remember Master Apollo telling me about that event years ago, and he said, yeah, just like you described. And then there are the people who stay out, and there are the people who kind of leave for a little bit, and a little bit becomes 5 minutes, maybe half an hour, and then they come back. Everybody wants to just keep training and training and training. What else about your experience in these multiple disciplines do you remember as really standing out, a standout moment at a test or a teaching moment that stands out to you?
Because life happens in waves, right? And there's different chapters, right? And I think there's different chapters of my life where there are certain things that stand out for each chapter, right? Like when I was in my first chapter of my martial arts, it's when I was testing for my first degree, and or my conditional black belt, and I had a cast on my foot, and I was like, well, I have to test. And I was like, well, I have a cast on, so I'm going to use it to my advantage. So I did. I used it to my advantage and used it as a weapon, and was like, this is what we're doing, and I'm gonna pass. To when I was more like in my high school days, where I was running like a cardio kickboxing and women's self-defense class at a dance studio, where it was like, hey, there was a mom there that was super like shy and had dealt with some different physical confrontations, and by taking the class, she developed some confidence to really stick up for herself in different areas. To earning my 5th degree, and everything that happened to get me to that point, the ups and the downs and everything. To I've had especially here recently, there was there's a 76-year-old man that got attacked in a King Soopers parking lot not too long ago. And, he came to me and was like, I feel I'm not as young as I used to be. And just going to the grocery store makes me nervous. Can you help me out? I would want to do a couple of self-defenses. And so I took him in, and we did a couple of things, and we've kind of worked with each other for a little bit now. And now he's like, this is the best part of my week. This is the best part of, I love this, and I'm not afraid anymore. And I'm feeling strong and confident. So he's definitely a spunky guy, but like there's many things that kind of stand out here and there from either teaching others to myself. But I think the main thing is just the interactions in the community that have kept me going the longest throughout everything.
Do you feel like you have more to learn?
Oh, yes. I have so much to learn. Everything from teaching to techniques to the business aspect of things. Like, I will never quit. I will never quit learning. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we do this. It's not necessarily for the recognition, but it's more for the journey along the way and the relationships that you develop. And as long as we're making a impact in the community in a positive manner, then you know what? That's honestly what makes it worth it. So
thank you for listening to the Ripple Effect Martial Arts Podcast. Find episodes and more at rippleeffectmartialarts.com.